What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Cantina Hour. You get not one, but two this week. And we have a special one for you today as we're going to be talking about episode 3 of X-Men 97 with some friends of ours. But first things first, we got to go through some housekeeping items. Go ahead, Hops Geek News on your favorite podcasting platforms, social media platforms, YouTube, you know it. We're there. Subscribe, like, share, all of that good stuff to let the people know that you care. The people being me and Lauren and her mom, because her mom listens and my mom pops in and out once in a while. So let them know that you care and we can continue doing this fun stuff. Aside from that, go ahead, leave a review. And then, of course, as always, patreon.com/hopsgeeknews if you should choose to support the show. Man, great one for you today, as our friend Super Laser Seth is going to drop some knowledge. He is the X-Men aficionado. And before we get to him, I'm going to talk about my beer of the night, which is a perfect, because we're talking X-Men. We're talking episode 3 of X-Men. And if you know episode 3 of X-Men, things got a little wonky. And with that said, I'm drinking the Pinnacle of Insanity. And I chose it for the label. Things got weird in this episode. It's actually from One Family Brewing Company in Manassas, Virginia. It's a cherry vanilla bourbon barrel aged stout. It's got rich, deep bark stout is blended with fresh pureed cherries and Tahitian vanilla bean, and then it is aged in Smith Bowman bourbon barrels. Now, Smith Bowman is a Fredericksburg distillery. My father-in-law absolutely loves it. I love their very hard to get bourbon, John J. Bowman. So this is pretty cool. I didn't realize that when I poured it. Pretty dark, but that's what I'm drinking. Lauren, gonna throw it to you. What are you drinking?
So I'm still sipping on the beer. So we just recorded a Godzilla vs. King Kong episode with a very special guest that Matt is very familiar with. He lives in his house. Matt pays for everything he owns. It's his son. So this is 11.5%. So that's why I'm still sipping on this. It's from Weathered Souls. It's called Coffee Cavernous. You can see it. It is absolutely fantastic. And of course, as it warms, it's getting better. It's using Mostra coffee. I know they're in San Antonio.
It's not Mothra, is it?
Oh, I should have said that on the other one when we were recording. Son of the nutcracker. But I do have a very themed beer. I'm a little concerned this has aged too long in my fridge. This one is from my mom and my stepdad. They went up to Mansfield, Ohio, and it is from the Phoenix Brewing Company Redemption IPA. And if you look at that can, it's got the Phoenix on it. And I got a little Phoenix toy here that I will be, once I pour it, I will be taking a picture with it. This was actually on my middle child's baby shower cake. So we had a cake that had fire on it, and this was on the top of it, and it said Brielle.
Dang.
So I will let y'all know if that has aged decently. I'm sure it's not nearly as good as it was the 6 months ago that she gave it to me, but it is a classic West Coast IPA, and I will give you an update after I finish this.
Awesome. Now, real quick, Laser Cat is from a really good brewery in Worcester, Mass, called Medusa, and I cannot wait to get back there. I'm about 40 minutes away from there. Medusa does really great beers. But we got this handsome man right here below us. Seth, welcome to the show. Go ahead, introduce the people, let them know who you are and how's it going.
Hi, everybody. I am known as Super Laser Seth. I'm in Denver, Colorado, but I'm a good old Southern boy, originally from down in Rogue's neck of the woods near New Orleans. I mean, Gamut's neck of the woods, New Orleans, Louisiana. And I help out sometimes with my good friend DT Carroll on the Space Castle YouTube series and hang out with these guys on Discord.
That's right. He does. And now we have one more friend to hang out tonight. That's right. DT's out there. We see him in the chat. Let us know. Seth is too handsome. He absolutely is. Thank you. Getting to meet the two of you through our Discord, which if you have not joined our Discord, you absolutely should, because you get to meet incredible individuals like Seth and DT. And they're amazing, awesome people. And Seth is out there and DT is out there really dropping so much knowledge. That's why I wanted to get him on the show. It's absolutely incredible how much they know about comics and all of this really cool stuff that we love to talk about. So guys, join our Discord. We do have one more person though. Micah has entered the room. Micah, what's up, man? Welcome back to the show. What are you drinking tonight?
Hold up. I've got Golden Painkiller from 3 Notched. It's an Imperial Golden Ale. And I've got this Cool Beast glass.
Is it because you gotta be like Wolverine and kill the pain of knowing that your one true love is either fake or somebody else?
No. Honestly, I was running to get down here to get on here, and I just grabbed the first beer I looked at. Yeah.
That happens. I did that last week. I'm like, I'm not even attempting to theme this to the episode, but it's a good beer.
Oh man, this has got pineapple, orange, and coconut in it.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. I love some good pineapple.
Yeah.
Pineapple's my favorite.
I think they're fruits that you might find on Krakoa. I don't know.
Ooh,
maybe.
awesome.
There you go.
We are talking the third episode. I don't know how I still spelled recapping wrong in our thing down here, and nobody's gonna say anything.
I didn't even see it.
I
don't even know what you're talking about.
Scroll on the bottom.
I'm a very polite house guest.
You know what? We're out of here. I'm not doing the show anymore. No, and it won't even let me fix it. So we're talking X-Men episode 3 from X-Men 97. It just dropped on Disney Plus recently, where this leaves us off of episode 2. Jean Grey has her baby, Cyclops. They name him Nathan, and then a certain somebody shows up. So Seth, why don't we go ahead? Why don't you let us know who Madeline Pryor kind of is?
Sure. So Madeline Pryor was originally introduced in the 80s in the X-Men comics as a scientist working in, I think, the Arctic or Alaska that Cyclops meets, who happens to look exactly like Jean Grey. What a weird coincidence. At the time, I believe that Jean was originally intended to stay dead. That changed. Cyclops married Madeline Pryor. They had a son, Nathaniel Summers. And then eventually, as she is known to do, Jean Grey came back via the Phoenix Force and showed up. Scott and the other X-Men immediately said, you know what? We don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, Madeline. Get out of here. And she ended up making a deal with the devil. Literal devils. And invading New York, unleashing a bunch of demons. Didn't go
as one normally kind of does.
The Goblin Queen, which she actually said in this.
Yes, they dropped the Goblin Queen. They got a lot of the great imagery in there, having Morph turn into Illyana Rasputin because she was heavily involved in that crossover too. Was a great touch.
Yeah, it was very intense episode, man. It kicks right off. Again, she's there. They're kind of trying to figure out. They're sampling blood. Beast is doing his thing, and he finds a common thing because somebody always leaves their calling card, so to speak. And now, Micah, why don't you tell us who that Mister somebody kind of is?
Well, I like the way Beast said it. He said it's what did he say? Something is sinister. It's only sinister or something. I mean, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, he dropped like a fun little.
It was like
pun.
Yeah, definitely Mister Sinister. Yeah.
Who is Mister Sinister? Why is he so important? Why are they so afraid of him? I know you guys have a lot of knowledge on this, so why don't Micah tell us what you know about?
With Wolverine.
Well, there's a whole mess of stuff in the comics that it would take a very long time to talk about. But according to the animated series, and if you watch the previous animated series from back in the day, he was trying to get his hands on Scott and Jean's DNA, and he was like really obsessed with them and creepy, and so there were several points in that in those 3 or 4 seasons where he had plenty of time to get Jean's DNA and clone her, which I kind of believe it happened during the 4-part Beyond Good and Evil, because he was able to kind of manipulate time at that period because Apocalypse gave him that ability. So it's very possible he was, running around like jumping through portals and growing clones. So, but he wants to make the ultimate mutant, and apparently their DNA can do it. And I guess we'll see what happens.
We will indeed. Seth, what do you know about Mister Sinister? I know you know a lot as well. Is there anything that we've left out about his introduction?
No, Micah covered it pretty well. He's one of the main things to know about him is aside from just messing with Scott and Jean, he's been around for centuries. Not as long as Apocalypse, but in a similar vein. They actually had an episode of the original animated series recapping his origin, and Morph gives a good recap of it here. He was born in the 1800s, and he's been experimenting on and dissecting and taking pieces of powers from various mutants since for at least 200-300 years.
Yeah, yeah. Lauren, what happens after Madeline Pryor shows up? Take us through this next sequence of events because it gets kind of creepy, especially as Jean takes the baby to the room, and things get a little weird from there on a baby monitor.
So first I want to give a shout out to Micah, because when we were talking about these first 2 episodes last week, and I said, well, who is that person that showed up? And we didn't know. He actually commented on our YouTube. He's like, that's Madeline Pryor. She's a clone of Jean.
He
So
did.
obviously you were spot on. You knew what was going on, Matt, and I didn't. So it was very heartbreaking, especially because Seth, you educated us today on the Discord that she didn't go batshit until everybody abandoned her. And here she went pretty quick. But also, I mean, she just had that baby, and she goes into the room and she's hearing things on the baby monitor, and it's like an Invincible when the 2 guys that one's always a clone and they're like, you're the clone. No, you're the clone. You're so stupid. You don't know you're the clone. Neither of them know that they're the clone. They both think that they're the, OG Jean Grey. And I just think it's also heartbreaking because she just had this baby. And I do think, I thought that was really cool, though, that then when Jean brings her back down from being this goblin queen, that she used the anchor of how you felt, because anybody who's had a kid knows that the love you feel when that kid is born is stronger, especially for a mother. I don't know what it's like for a dad, so I'm not saying that dads don't feel the
It's
same.
a lot stronger at that point, and then they turn 5, and then they just absolutely continuously get kicked out of school and act a fool. And at that point, there is no love. Don't think about the happy memories.
All right, well,
The
this
Goblin
baby's
Queen
still an
can take
infant.
her.
Like Madeline Pryor is still high on that oxytocin, man. That oxytocin is a real thing. I get high off those infants. And she brought that and anchored her, and I thought they brought like a real piece of what it's like to be human, what it's like to be a mother. And Jean used that to bring Madeline back down to earth. And I thought it was a beautiful scene. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And I'm watching it and I'm like, it's probably good I didn't watch this with Logan and I watched it while he was at school, because I don't know that the 6-year-old would have been able to. It was creepy. And that scene with Xavier, like when the teddy bear turned into Xavier with that smile, that was terrifying.
Yeah, let's talk about this sequence. So from that point, she kind of transforms. It's Mister Sinister. He's on the baby monitor, basically like poltergeist
I didn't
style.
answer your question, did I?
No, and you're fine. Don't worry about it. We get excited here. And so he starts to get all creepy with it, and at that point takes over her mind and everything like that. And the house turns into this house of horrors, which quickly means a lot of different things for people. So for Morph, the poor guy is spooked right away. For our man Gambit, he sees some pretty messed up stuff. He goes into the room because Morph was messing with him previously about how Magneto and Rogue were off training every single day. The next day, he's like, wow, they have the training room this day. And
man, they're locking themselves in the danger room like all day long.
Like poor Gambit. And of course, his nightmare is when he opens
can
the door.
you blame Rogue if there's only one person in the world that you can get off on? Like, you gotta do what you gotta do.
But he makes killer beignets. Yes, I can.
I
mean, all about the breakfast after the fact.
Beignets are quite fantastic.
And he also rocks the crop top, which has been a hot piece of contention on the internet lately. Like,
even though every freaking dude with abs in the 90s wore one.
I mean, I'm all about bringing the crop tops back. Maybe not for myself, but I'm all about kind of bringing it back. And shout out to Megan.
All the 90s stuff is coming back. It'll be here soon.
It is fashion, full circle, man. But you get this really creepy scene of naked Magneto and Rogue melting into each other. I mean, Micah, what was your thought when you see this going down?
I'm just like, so this is set in 1997 and Magneto was like 12 in the 40s. And I'm like, okay.
Micah's doing math.
This is just weird. But I mean, it is comic book accurate. They do have various relationships in the comics and alternate realities, even have kids. So, I could see why they wrote it in. But I mean, it was, man, Gambit was like, I mean, and the thing too, and I don't know, we might jump on this in a little bit, but when he was getting all spooked out, she was like, I've got me a man who's a hero. Like this whole thing about Magneto being a hero. And then later on in the episode, when they get to Sinister's place, like Morph is tripping out, and who puts his hand on his shoulder? Magneto's like, it's okay, dude. Like, I'm a hero.
Oh, I didn't even pick that up.
And like Gambit's like looking at him, man. When that happens, Gambit's like, oh. I'm gonna charge you, blow you up, man. Peace.
These cards ain't metal.
Yeah.
Seth, what were your thoughts when you see the scene of Rogue and Magneto getting really intimate?
I thought my first thought is this bodes really, really well for the show long term because they did a great job of using these scenes to advance all of the other relationship plot lines that they have going on, including Gambit and Magneto and Rogue, even though the episode wasn't remotely focused on them. The same thing with Morph and what he sees when we get to him and some of those, like the episode is very squarely focused on Scott and Jean, but all of the other moments that they do really move everybody forward.
Yeah, they really do. Lauren, what were your thoughts?
Well, it was creepy. That was
I already asked you. I get that.
yeah.
You already mentioned. I do forget. It's my apologies. Yeah,
but but also I felt like it was diving into their biggest fears, and I think you even said that. And I feel like Gambit probably senses that something's going on with Rogue and Magneto. I think everybody does, or they wouldn't be teasing them like that.
Palpable, as Megan says, hot as fuck.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you get the way that like Morph and Wolverine are kind of teasing Magneto when they're going through the Danger Room roster, and they're seeing that Rogue and Magneto are scheduled, and they're over and over and over, and they're teasing him in a way that's like, without actually having to have a conversation about it. Everybody's kind of aware that there's something going on, even if they're in the same spot as us, that they don't know exactly what it is. Because we saw them touch and they hinted at a past relationship in episode 2, but we don't know exactly how far they're going with that or where they've said it yet.
And honestly, Rogue and Gambit have never been like solidified in the cartoon. I feel like it's only been comments and like teasing, and it always seems like Gambit's chasing Rogue. But it's almost like a Wolverine Jean kind of thing.
Well, Magneto and Rogue have been together in the comics, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but in the cartoon, they haven't.
No, the cartoon they haven't.
Okay.
But in the comic books, they have been together. So I thought Seth hit on something really important. It's the fact that in this episode, it's very much primarily focused on Jean and Scott. However, they do a really, really clever job tying these other plot threads throughout. So you got the Wolverine with Jean, like that's never going away, which we'll get to in a minute. They've got the Gambit and Rogue. They've got, Morph going through like he's back in hell, that kind of thing. And all these different, they show the characters very well, I thought. And then of course it delves into this big old house of horrors. As Megan says in the comments, if you're in the comments, hey, let us know what you know about all this, man. We'll obviously shout it out. When Rogue lost her power, she was able to touch folks. So obviously she was like, hey, Magneto, I can touch you. I saw it. I don't know who it was, but maybe it was in the Discord, Seth or Micah, might have been you, who was like, well, Magneto can magnetize like a layer outside of his skin. And that's basically how Rogue can touch him, because she's not actually touching his skin. He's able to like magnetize himself. Is that kind of accurate? Maybe it wasn't you guys, but what are your guys' thoughts on that theory?
I think it's like two magnets. Try to put two magnets to each other. I think there's an element to her abilities that has magnetism.
So repels.
Yeah, there's been two versions of it that I've seen, and one was what Matt mentioned about like the kind of Magneto being able to do a force field that would let she could sense the touch without her powers working. And I believe it was in Age of Apocalypse or a similar alternate timeline where she absorbed Polaris's powers, and because she had Polaris's powers, which are also magnetism based. One of Magneto's daughters, they canceled each other out and they could touch. She couldn't absorb any more magnetism powers because she already had the exact same power. So her powers just didn't work on him anymore.
Interesting.
And I think that was the timeline where they had a son together. In the comics, just in the regular 616 timeline, I think they went off and tried to make like a mutant stronghold in the Savage Land at one point. Like they just ran off together and lived there for a while and tried to make it into a mutant homeland.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that was kind of I guess I don't know, like the X-Men again. I'm very open about the fact that I love the X-Men, but I'm just not as deeply read up on the X-Men like everybody else. And yeah, again, Megan, that's what she was going to say. She couldn't remember Polaris's life to save her life. But going back to the show, they kind of do delve into like the teddy bear turns into this thing. And then all of a sudden they go to hell.
Oh, and the TV with the ring.
Yeah, well, it's very Poltergeist again with Jubilee.
Yeah.
Which Jubilee gets up and like that was cool. And then
from Poltergeist to straight up ring.
Yeah, like climbs out. It was creepy. It was creepy. And then we go down and there's this really cool scene that I absolutely loved. It was Cyclops and Bishop working so well together.
Yeah,
he basically absorbs all of that. What were you guys thinking about during that scene?
I was like, I've been waiting on it to happen since they've been teamed up for however long, you know. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you've got a guy that can fire off energy and you've got a guy that can absorb energy and redirect it in a more powerful dosage. Like, why aren't you doing this more often?
Right.
Yeah. And then them both telling each other you're welcome at the same time afterwards.
Yes.
Just that great little bit of camaraderie. This was a really good Bishop episode too, I thought.
Yes,
they again, not a ton of focus, but like they get all the time his time jumping stuff back in, and they use him really well to explain why the show kind of retcons stuff a lot of the time, both from other ones and within its own continuity. Just like time travelers come back all the time and change stuff. It just happens. I can't tell you anything. It's
the Mandela effect.
It's just how it works.
I'm traveling, man.
Yeah, my brain was going crazy because I'm like, wait a second. In the previous series, if Bishop didn't have the armband, he would go ripping back through time. Like that's how they defeated Nimrod. And I'm like, he's running around with no armband on. But then he was in the axis of time for a period of time. Maybe he has the ability now to kind of exist in time. So that makes him like the essential time traveler for the show now. And I mean, I'm sure Seth knows a lot about Cable's backstory and how confusing it is. Using Bishop in a show like this is absolutely it's kind of like peaceful to me. After if you go and read Cable's backstory, it's awful, man.
It's a mess.
Oh God.
Well, they're obviously teasing Cable in this episode too, because at the end, Bishop's like, I know a guy, essentially, and he's like, there's only room for one of us, and me and Nathan can only make the jump.
And it wasn't even like I can try and come back. It was like, okay, this is a one-way trip. Peace out. Like, even though they had come back multiple times in the original series, but it made sense if you know Nathan's backstory. It made sense that they weren't going to do that because then he wouldn't become who he becomes.
Yeah, but he's obviously going to take him to Forge.
Yeah.
And with the teaser we got with Storm, Forge is going to try to save Nathan in the future for some, peace or retribution of some sort.
Well, even if Beast starts working on the cure now, I figure by the time it gets to the future, that was kind of my
that's cool.
Beast is like, I need a few years. Well, obviously, then if you just need a few years, by the time he gets to the future, that cure should be there.
Yeah,
by the time we get to a few years, we're at X-Men 2000, and that's obviously where we pick up. No, I'm just kidding. The movies.
Very Doctor Who, the 50th anniversary episode, when they were all like, "Oh, we would need centuries to calculate this." Okay, like I'll start it now, and then they all do it, and it's like, okay, now it's done.
Right.
I love the Doctor Who references because that's a lot of what I was thinking about. Anytime there's time travel, I'm just like, it's timey-wimey, man. Like, don't even try to figure it out. It's just, it is what it is. And something that, again, like I gotta say, man, I feel bad for Wolverine in the sense that we break out of this hell sequence. We're back, and now they're building a team to go to Madeline Pryor and Mister Sinister's lair to get Nathan. And it's always like Wolverine keeps getting left behind. It feels like.
I think he was perfectly fine being left behind with Jean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're right. You're right. He's like,
he didn't argue. He was like, okay, whatever. I'll stay here.
Wolverine, Logan, I need you to stay with Jean.
Like, peace out, Cyclops.
Are you sure?
Go get your kid, Psych. Go get your kid.
And Wolverine was the one who got through to her. To get her back to save the day. And I do like that we're still getting a decent amount of Wolverine, but he's not been the focus of pretty much anything because Lord knows we've had enough Wolverine.
I was gonna say, what were you guys? Were you guys worried about that kind of going into this with the Wolverine's popularity? Were they going to kind of try to shoehorn him to the front, or?
I wasn't. I didn't feel like the previous series really. I mean, they had a lot of Wolverine-centric episodes, but I didn't feel like it was overwhelming. Not like some of the others. I mean, not like the movies and the 2 other animated series we got. They were all Wolverine. So, I felt good about it.
I mean, we literally had one called Wolverine and the X-Men. So
No, he's a part of the X-Men. There is no and. He is.
Well, and when we talked with Eric and Julia, they even said, like, we intentionally didn't want one person to be the focus of it. And like, we knew how popular Wolverine was, and they intentionally made sure that he wasn't. So I felt like they were going to, with them being the consultants on the show and with the people of the show that are running it now are fans of the 90s one, I feel like they're going to keep it consistent, because as much as they know everybody loves Wolverine, they understand the importance of these other characters.
Well, you're definitely right. And I do find it interesting. What are your guys' thoughts on the fact that, jumping ahead again, Wolverine was kind of the one to break through to Jean? Because I
love it.
Personally found it like, oh, we're still going to continue to hang on to this throuple kind of idea almost.
I don't think they're ever going to let that go. It's just,
it's happened in the comics.
They're going to have that door between the rooms.
If they ever go live on the moon, we'll know what's happening.
Was it different? Well, like the moon's not a planet. I'm gonna say like different area code.
It's got one big zip code.
I think it was kind of perfect for the situation, because the original Jean shows up, and like, even though Scott's like there, he's kind of all over the place. I mean, could you imagine being like, holy crap, like,
who did I knock up?
Boom. Like, I got a kid, like, what's going on? So like, it was really good that Wolverine was there for that, because I mean, his character will always have that, I'm in love with Jean Grey the most.
Yeah.
One day Wolverine is going to be like to Nathan, he may be your dad, but he's not your daddy.
And I mean, it's a perfect situation for Wolverine. Now there's 2 Jeans.
That's
I was thinking
not fair to Jean. Somebody else
theoretically, like, Cyclops married one and had a kid with one, and Wolverine can be like, "Well, I've always had a crush on you. Can we give this a shot?"
He's
but
like,
if Jean prefers Scott over Wolverine,
that's
not fair.
That's the rub.
The problem is consent.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of couples therapy for Cyclops and Jean before anything like that can happen.
Poor Cyclops.
Probably,
yeah,
probably what'll happen in the series, because of Wolverine's luck, he'll get going and like things will be doing well with Jean, and then they'll be like, "Hey, we need you to go to Japan." Oh,
that would be awesome.
And then he gets to Japan, and there's Marty. Oh, well, did they do that in the previous one?
I don't think so.
I know he went to Japan, but I don't think Martico was in it.
No, they did.
They
did Yuriko and Lady Deathstrike, so they kind of did the same thing but changed the name.
Yeah,
Wolverine has several dead or turned evil Japanese girlfriends to choose from, so
he's got a type: redheads and evil Japanese girlfriends. So
hey, they're not. Mariko wasn't evil. She had an evil family.
Well,
sure.
Yukio wasn't really evil either. She ended up like taking care of like one of his like love children with what was the girl who she was like murdered? Dankin's mom. They actually had one of the tombstones when they did the flat, or like there was something in the old one where Wolverine was having like a nightmare and her name was on a tombstone.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Starts with like an I think. I can't remember now. But yeah, no, he's his background though in Japan is so important in the comics, and so much of who he is, that I wish they would touch more on that in anything, TV or movie, because even in the movie it was like he was confused as to why he was in Japan, and he didn't know what was going on, and he wasn't familiar with the culture, and like that's not who Wolverine is at all in the comics. He's very much so familiar with the culture. It's part of who he is. He speaks Japanese. Like he's got, I think, multiple kids that are half Japanese. So I would love to see more of it. I would love
every American military man.
Let's get a variant, maybe in Wolverine and Deadpool, that is, full on with the Japanese culture.
Obviously, this is kind of jumping away from X-Men 97, but in the MCU, when we do get Wolverine, are they going to explore any of his Japanese culture? Because it's very vastly important to the character, and they've stayed pretty faithful.
I would hope they do. If not, like, I'm not watching. Like,
you're watching. You leave the theater at the end because
I mean,
night one.
That ticked me off. Like he, like in that movie when he went to Japan, and it was just like, I'm here. This guy wants my immortality, and he's in a big, Power Ranger suit. Peace. I don't have powers.
What was it? Oh man, who was the girl's Viperess?
Yeah, that was
Did not like her in that movie.
awful.
What about you, Seth?
I expect it to unfortunately probably be closer to that version of it where it's like, hey, like he maybe just touch on the past that he's been to Japan before, but not to have it be like a huge part of his character.
Yeah.
Wolverine
that would
is a
make
guy
sense.
who's got a lot going on.
Yeah,
Unless
he
they
does.
try again with the solo
up?
movies with Wolverine. But yeah, in this episode though, they get the crew, they go to another house of horrors where Madeline has just absolutely is wreaking havoc. There's some really cool fight scenes, and I got a feel for my boy Scott, man. He goes from episode 1 being the leader of the X-Men, really badass moments, and then ever since Magneto came back, he's no longer the leader of the X-Men. Now he gets this really great moment with his son's born, but now there's a clone of Jean and his world's been kind of turned upside down, and he's getting his ass kicked essentially in this house. Madeline is being like evil Jean at the moment. The Goblin Queen is being just absolutely ferocious about it. I mean, let's talk about that. Lauren, what were your thoughts going through this house
I
version of
instantly
Goblin
thought
Queen?
of David Bowie.
I did too. I can't hear Goblin Queen without thinking of the Labyrinth, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I thought she went from 0 to 60 pretty quick, but it made sense if she was being controlled by Sinister because, Sinister's not the best. He's kind of a dick.
And we also have 25 minutes in episode, so
Yeah, but no, I mean, I already said what my favorite part of that scene was with Jean bringing her back down to earth. But no, it was super crazy when all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, they're like in utero with the infant and like, like that was some
that
intense
got
like
weird. Like,
symbolism and stuff. Yeah, it went to a very weird place, but it was weird, but it didn't feel like out of place at the same time.
No, agreed. It was very much like, oh wow, this because you forget, like it's a cartoon. So a lot of people are like, you're
She looked
transported
hot.
back watching this when you were a kid, the X-Men 93 series. And so to see some of these sequences, you're like, oh wow, they're going for this. It's kind of crazy. I mean, Micah, what were your thoughts about this whole entire sequence fighting through the house?
I thought it was really cool. I loved when they were like falling to hell and Beast is just like, I have no idea how she's able to warp reality like this. And we're like, okay, she has reality warping powers. And then, they keep, going on with it. I mean, in the comics, she can do sorcery on top of her telepathic powers. So it's like, instead of having to explain all of that and jam it all in one episode, she's just has dormant reality warping abilities, and Sinister has a fetish for Dante's Inferno, and there you go. But
Really does.
it was a really cool scene. I loved the whole thing. I loved it when they showed up and they fought her, and then Jean showed up, and Jean was no match for her until she found the back door of the love for the kid.
Right.
That was literally,
which I think that baby is very clearly Madeline Pryor's. I don't think that there's really a question at that. But it was interesting because they shared memories. I have to assume that Jean has the memory of the feelings she felt when the baby was born. Otherwise, I don't think that she could have tapped into those feelings if she herself did not feel them.
Yeah.
The read I kind of had on it was that Jean could see the memories because she was in Madeline's mind, but she could also sense that she didn't have the same emotional connection to them because she didn't experience it.
Right.
The same way Madeline at the beginning was able to read her mind and see the images of Jean waking up in Sinister's lab and escaping, but she's not connecting with it the same way. Like they have their overlapping memories that were the original Jean's memories that are imprinted on both, that they both experienced, like they both lived them, and then they diverge at some point and they both know the others now, but they don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. It's like the most empathetic you can possibly be.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. It was very clever how they did that. Again, the imagery in this episode is amazing. She kind of comes back and they go to battle Mister Sinister, of course, but he just kind of peace out. I'm out of here, like General Grievous style. See you later.
Skeletor.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm out of here. And so he just
reminded me of Skeletor the whole time. I'm like, he kind of reminds me of Skeletor.
The one they've made a million memes out of?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is very, very Mister Sinister because he's the kind of villain that's always got like 300 levels of backup plan. Like, yeah, there's a chance that she'll break out. Like, I don't think she'll break out of my control, but there's a chance they'll rescue Nate at some point. So I've got something else going on.
The poor guy's the Batman of the evil villains.
Exactly. And he's a cockroach. He always comes back. there's no getting rid of him fully, because it, like, even if you catch him, he'll Hannibal Lecter it and be like, no, actually, I've set up a situation where you need me now. You need to keep me around for some reason, to help with the
I know the
virus.
antidote. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, Nathan has been infected. He was trying to get his, him or immortal, excuse me. And Beast is like, I don't know. Bishop's essentially where he talked about, hey, I know a guy. And Scott, the whole time, which kind of killed me, was funny. He was like, I can't abandon him the way my dad did. And then Scott storms out of the room, abandoning him the way his dad did. And I was just like,
But it was one of those, like, I
me.
can't. Okay. I'm trying to think. The best example I can think is like when you're in labor and you're like, I can't do this. You don't have a fucking choice. Like, you have to do this. And I felt like it was a similar situation. He knew he had to, but he did not want to. And he was just saying, like, I can't do this. But I don't think that he did abandon him, because
I don't
he
think he did
didn't
either.
walk out on him. He unfortunately did the hardest thing a parent would ever have to do, which is very unrealistic, to have to leave your child so they can travel to the future to get an, cure for a disease that turns you into like a robot.
Essentially, yeah.
But,
Basically.
I think I was the person on Discord that had a little bit of a different take on it, which was like, he's giving a speech about, I will never walk out on my son, and then you literally get the visual of him walking out, and it's because he's emotional, like, I know I'm going to have to give him up and I can't be here for it, but that's also him centering himself and what he's feeling, as understandable as it is, and not what's going to happen with the kid. And like, he's got two incredibly powerful psychics there. We see Madeline like telepathically using that time to like try to imprint on and bond with Nathan. And like, she's powerful enough to like include him in that if he's there.
Right. But I think at that point it was very rocky, and like, he didn't know what to feel with her. And I feel like Cyclops was processing his own issues with his dad at the same time he's processing giving up his child. And
then also he had a child with somebody who's not his Jean, but not Jean.
Right. He kind of, he didn't. I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax you could go down, because he did not consent to that. So like, there's a whole other like trauma and everything he's now dealing with, and that all of them have to deal with. But I feel like, I wonder if maybe he understands a little bit more why his dad did what he did, and maybe his dad didn't have a choice. Like, you can hate somebody's decision and respect it at the same time.
Well, his dad ended up in space. Like, I guess he could have came back to Earth, but
I was gonna say his dad's very much like a space traveler. So
yeah, he ended up becoming a pirate. So I can understand why he's like, you could have been here the whole time, Like,
didn't he think that they were dead?
Yeah. He thought his parents died in a plane crash.
No, but I thought that Corsair thought that Havoc and Cyclops were dead.
That's very possible, actually. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he thought they were dead. Yeah.
Surprise! So, maybe if you weren't getting space booty, Dad, you would have known. Right. I'm one of the strongest mutants out here. Jeez, gosh.
You're to go become a space pirate. Ugh.
Yeah. Cyclops has had kind of a huge dilemma since the all three episodes started. He shows up. He's like leading the X-Men. He's doing a really cool job. And Magneto shows up. He's like, nah, man, I got this. And then
Dory, little guy, I got this.
And then of course Xavier's been dead. And then like the X-Men aren't like really listening. And then like, and then all of this happens with, his family. And then he has to like send his sick kid into the future. Like, so yeah, it's a lot to deal with. But yeah, I'm not like
Professor Magneto's School of the Emotionally Traumatized.
I just kind of would have been with my kid all the way till the end, if not tried to go through the portal and died. Weeping on the ground.
Well, again, it's one of those things like it's his kid, but like it's not the woman he thought it was, and he's got. I mean, if anybody's been through it, the Ringer, these first 3 episodes, it's so clearly Scott Summers. Like, my man, like. Are we going to give this guy a break at any point, or this is probably very crucial to his?
No, the next episode is Wolverine's going to take Jean and he's going to crumble.
And if Emma moves in, it's over.
I mean, not too many future stories, but given some of the other storylines they're teasing and where they've and where they go, like. Yeah, there's some other challenges for Scott as far as leadership, even beyond Magneto. that
True.
may be coming up.
The more
Where do you-
Magneto we get in this, the more I
Other
want
characters.
Michael Fassbender to grow out his hair and come back.
Magneto is like a silver buff fox. Like my dude is pumping the iron. He's like, no,
Let's
no,
get
no,
Mike.
no.
I'm ready for
I'm gonna
Michael
let the
Fassbender.
boulder
Let's do
shoulders
this.
out. I'm gonna sit here and I'm going no helmet. You're getting the whole locks. Like
Although the
Gambit,
outfit
you
reminds me
wish.
of Alvin and the Chipmunks because he has
And
the
man-
big old M.
And man, can we talk about how spectacular that fight between him
Yeah.
and Madeline was?
I was about to say,
His
yeah.
magnetism versus her telekinesis, with her being able to take him down, but him putting up a really strong
And
fight.
he's struggling.
And this show does a spectacular job of like making everybody's powers cool and matter, like having the scale for like Storm's big entrances, like completely wiping out people, but also like Cyclops with his beams and like having that in close combat and showing how valuable that can be. And Morph being able to shift and showing how like everybody gets to contribute. So like the big displays of power don't invalidate anybody else, which is tough to do in these kind of things.
Talk about when Morph went back to like his like plain face, like that was heartbreaking. Like
He was like, I'm soulless. And it was like, dang.
but it was like a reminder of what they went through with Sinister before. And like you just saw that face, which we hadn't seen since the 90s, because now he's doing the more like comic book face, or they're doing the more comic book face. And so like that, just a quick little glimpse of that with the bags under the eyes, I thought that was like super heartbreaking. And I feel like they need a whole episode kind of breaking.
I feel like we're gonna
down
get like a
and-
more centric episode probably coming up here soon. It's
I'm
kind of because
hoping
he's
so, yeah.
like they've been a very big piece early on in the first 3 episodes, and of course they're a fan favorite character, things like that. But what are your guys' takes? Like, where do you see this season kind of going? We've seen the first 3 episodes. We've gotten a lot in 3 episodes. Seth, we'll start with you. Like, where do you think we're going with this season if you had to predict?
Sure. So there's a very clear storyline that they're following with Storm and the loss of her powers in Life Death. That's a great story with her and Forge. They kind of, and I think her, what, depending on how quickly that progresses, eventually obviously she's got to reunite with the team. Whether she has her powers back for that or not remains to be seen. I think it seems like more than likely that'll go more quickly. So I think we'll get a kind of a big Storm coming in for the save. I kind of suspect that this may be headed towards ending the season with the team divided, with a group maybe sticking with Magneto, and maybe getting an X-Men versus X Factor or X Force kind of take. With some of the people who are like, Magneto's earned our trust by the end of the season, we're going to stick with him, and possibly Cyclops or some of the others being like, hey, no, I'm going to go off and do my own thing now, and there are going to be people that will follow him, and that will open it up for more of the other mutants that right now we're only seeing as like more shape-shifting cameos to come in and be on one or the other team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, there's so many X-Men that they haven't actually shown yet. I'm waiting for them to bring a lot more into the fold. Micah, what are your predictions for how this season's going to go?
Well, I mean, they've already started with a very bold 3 episodes, and just like Seth said, I agree with him. Like, they're going down that trail of Storm's story, and then seeing Magneto and kind of split the team up. Also, I think Charles might show back up at the end.
Oh yeah, he's in the intro. He
definitely.
has to.
Yeah, and in the comics, he shows back up and he takes them to, I believe he takes them to the Shi'ar. They go into space. That's when they're all wearing the like matching costumes or the training uniforms or whatever. So maybe they go into that story. It's hard to say. There's just so much going on. I do know we're definitely going to get Nightcrawler soon, which excites me. Because I saw some, there's some pictures floating around out there of Wolverine and Nightcrawler teamed up.
Yeah.
And hopefully we see, some of the other X-Men they had in the previous series, like Psylocke and Archangel and all that, show back up for stories. But yeah, I mean, it can go anywhere, and they're taking it from really, really stout source material and the comics, and you can't complain with that going with the animated series. So.
And I do think it's really interesting because you mentioned Archangel, that they have the portrait that we've
Yeah.
seen of the original 5 with Angel in it.
They keep showing that.
When back in the original run of the animated series, it seemed very much implied that they didn't know who Warren Worthington III was when he originally showed up in that
Ooh, good
storyline.
point.
Like, they introduced him like he was a completely new character. So I feel like as much as this is a continuation of the other series, there's also kind of some pruning, almost like when the MCU recast Ed Norton into Ruffalo for the Hulk. Like, hey, technically all this stuff is canon, but we're going to tweak it a little bit to make a little bit more sense with the take that we're doing now, and just prune a little bit here and there.
Maybe it'll be like Friends, where they just have Rachel and Chandler meet each other 3 times, and we are all supposed to pretend that didn't happen.
Do you guys have any thoughts on getting an Excalibur? That was
Yes.
one of our comments. What are your thoughts, Micah?
In the previous series, Psylocke tells Worthington that she does everything for her brother. We all know who her brother is. He's Captain Britain, who led Excalibur. And personally, I loved Excalibur comics. They were great. So, if we get a version of that team, that would be great. And maybe we'll get Kitty Pryde, since she's the only core X-Men character that hasn't really made an appearance. That would be cool. But yeah, I would love to see Excalibur show up in an episode. Maybe that's the episode we're getting with Nightcrawler.
Ooh.
And there was a Captain Britain appearance in the original animated series, just like as a quick cameo. They showed a bunch of people reacting to Phoenix when she took everybody off on the moon in Phoenix Saga. And they showed him. They showed Doctor Strange reacting in some of those.
What about getting a Ghost Rider in with this Gambit? That's another good question we have here.
Yeah, that was a surprise, because I didn't think they would throw Ghost Rider in the series previously, but that would be great to see Ghost Rider show up and have an episode with just. I want Wolverine there, because Wolverine and Ghost Rider are great. Like, all the comics with them together is just great. So, like, if you get Wolverine, Gambit, and Ghost Rider, and then Ghost Rider's like, you're hanging out with this dude, I know this dude, and Wolverine's like, yeah, I know that punk, and then, we get a cool episode out of that. That'd be neat.
I also think that would be an interesting take to do, like, if they did, say, a Madeline Pryor centric episode again in the future. Like, she reappears and it's like, hey, she's got a lot of reasons to be vengeful, that, a spirit of vengeance does that. And in the comics, she's got connections to that, hellish mysticism side and sorcery.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And a love for her child is what brought her back down to Earth. But if now she has to grieve the loss of the child, well, that's a road to the dark side.
Lauren, well, since we're there, what kind of predictions do you have for the rest of this season, now that we're 3 episodes in?
So I do have a couple of things. I had to start writing them down because I was going to start forgetting after that 11.5% beer. By the way, this beer from the Phoenix Brewing Company, Redemption IPA, is absolutely delicious. So I can only imagine how good it was 6 months ago when my mom brought it to me. And I think I did show the can before. It's got the Phoenix on it. So perfect little can for this episode. Well, it would have been better if we were talking about the Phoenix run. But so the intro was really cool, that I don't think I noticed it last week, maybe because I was watching with my 6-year-old because it was spring break. The whole Marvel animation thing where you're seeing the what if cartoons. And so creating this whole Marvel animation thing, I think, is just so cool that we have this own little division now on Disney Plus that's all about that. So I thought that was really cool. Shout out to Micah. You commented in there were things you two were saying in the Discord that I was like, save it for the episode, because you guys were just like saying so many things that were like, oh yeah. Micah made the comment about Morph changing into all these different characters, which mean they have seen those characters and they've had a relationship with those characters. So that was a great point to make. So that means that, they've already come across, Magic and Colossus and all these other characters. So that's really cool. I think we're going to see more of those characters in the future. Storm, like Seth said, I think that's going to be a big story. But I freaking loved when Forge sat next to her. He's like, oh, this area could really use some rain. And she's like, what do you want? Just speak plainly. Like, she was not putting up with it.
I have no powers, man.
She was super cheesy in the 90s one. We still saw a lot of that cheese in the first episode with the powers of the rain. But I think that she's hilarious. And I think we're going to get more of like a down to earth kind of Storm with that comment. I just was like, good for you. Don't beat around. I hate small talk. Good for her. And also Magneto, when you were talking about like, well, Magneto's gaining their trust. Anybody who's read a comic or watched a movie with Magneto knows you don't fully trust Magneto. You can trust Magneto, but you don't fully trust Magneto. And you even heard Madeline Pryor make the comment, like, look at you trying to be a hero. Like, that's not gonna last long. That's just a bubble waiting to pop.
Yeah. I do feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop there, but I really like what Seth said. They're building up for two teams, two factions at the end of this season. You got Team Cyclops, you got Team Magneto, and I feel like they're going to break off in some regard because there's going to be some sort of contention. Because again, you have these two leaders. Cyclops was the inherited leader, supposed to be there. He's always been the leader of the
Now he's got a lot
X-Men.
of trauma.
Now
But he
he's
might
gone.
need to focus on leading to ignore his trauma, because that's what a good leader does.
Right. And there's that distrust of Magneto still buried in there somewhere that I think is going to start to really manifest itself as this season progresses. And then Magneto's there. He's trying to, if you read the Uncanny X-Men, he's tries to live into Charles's image. He tries really hard. And that's kind of what we're getting from there. So I think that two faction is going to come into play by the end of the season. I'm loving what we're getting. Absolutely enamored with this television series, man. It's above my expectations. Like I thought.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I was really excited for this, but it's gone above and beyond what I thought they would do as far as the emotional moments, the horror, just the real adult themes that they have. Like I was not expecting something this deep, and it's been amazing.
Are there any Wish cameos that any of you guys have, or even anybody that's watching in the
if there's anybody you
YouTube or
wish
the Facebook?
shows up, let us know right now in the comments. But let's start with Micah. Who do you really hope to see?
Well, I have a good feeling a lot of people are going to show up, but I really want to see X Factor show back up and see Havoc and Scott kind of realize that they're related. Because that's a big point with a lot of the X-Men comics. And I mean, Havoc had a huge role with the whole Madeline Pryor thing. I think he was even like dating her at one point in time in the comics. So like,
oh, that's awkward.
I don't know how that would work in the show now, but
Right.
I just want to see like Havoc and Cyclops, like, finally be like, yo, that's really it right now.
Yeah.
Him and he said Alex when he met his dad in the 90s one.
Yeah.
Like he mentioned him. Like, how'd they get separated? Yeah, we need that backstory.
Yeah, they were separated in orphanages, like just through the system.
Oh, fucking system.
Fuck the man. Seth, what do you wish cameos do you got?
I don't want them to go too far outside of X-Men characters too often, but when that little Daily Bugle flops by in the first episode and we see the Hellfire Gala with text by Eddie Brock and photos by Peter Parker, I love the dynamic when Spider-Man gets to hang around with the X-Men a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really fun dynamics there with him also being the other non-mutant superhero who gets a lot of public hate the way most don't. The one because of Jameson's obsession with him who's not accepted. We even saw like, is Spider-Man a mutant on that same paper? So I would love to see them have an episode to follow up on that.
Aren't they rumored to be bringing back the Spider-Man animated series? I saw a rumor that they're thinking about doing it with the revival and the success, because this animated series and X-Men 93 have absolutely been top most streamed shows. And so now they're thinking of bringing back that. And this would be a good way to backdoor pilot of return, bring back Spidey in this in like some one-off episode. I'm for it personally.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That'd be good.
I personally, because I just watched the 92 one recently, and I was surprised when I saw the newspaper and it wasn't the Daily Bugle, because this was before Sony bought Spider-Man. I actually just Googled it to make sure of that. Sony bought Spider-Man in 98, and then as of 2009, they're allowed to use Spider-Man in cartoons that are less than 44 minutes. So I was very surprised that it wasn't the Daily Bugle, and I noticed that too in the first one, because I love that.
Yeah.
And Iceman.
Yes.
They have him
yeah.
in the original 5 too, and they never really did anything with him in the original series. So I would love it would be really cool to have somebody
Right.
who was like part of the original 5 and then left and now comes back. I think it'd be a really interesting dynamic.
And there was like
Agreed.
drama between him and Cyclops, and like they just like left it unresolved. You're just like, oh well, he's just got to go do his own thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know Xavier. They said what is Xavier like? It was like the youngest child. He gets away with everything.
And
So
that
yeah,
could
we
play
do need more of his.
that could
story.
play really well into the team splitting, like Havoc being on the
Ooh,
opposite side of
yeah.
Cyclops, or if Wolverine and Cyclops are almost always on the opposite side of everything. What if Jean sides with whichever side Wolverine picks instead of Cyclops?
Mm.
Dang, lots of
Get some
good
So
drama.
who
things.
said Deadpool? That was in the Facebook.
That was
That,
Patrick said
Oh, yeah.
Deadpool. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
a good little backcourt right there. That'd be fun.
that would be funny though. It would be like, so when I went to Warped Tour 99, it was at
Whoa.
the Palm Beach amphitheater. Yeah, I just aged myself, and you weren't allowed to curse. So like Blink 182 comes out and they're like, it's hot as heck out. Oh, Eminem got kicked off the stage after like 2 songs. He's like, F that. I'm not
That's
following those
crazy. It's
things.
Warped Tour, guys. Come on.
So I feel like if Deadpool comes onto this, it would be like that. Like, hey guys, I'm gonna mess you up, or
If they
making
have the
silly
balls to do that.
jokes about. Right, that was one of the thing. Like, yeah, they're like, it's hot as heck when they wanted to say, yeah, but I
Goodness
feel like it would
gracious.
be similar to that.
Yeah. Well,
Worth it,
that's
though.
been our recap of episode 3 of X-Men 97. First things first, though, Seth, why don't you kick us off where people can find you?
Sure. You can find me mostly on the Hopsgeek New or Space Castle Discords. I do some work with DT on his YouTube series Space Castle. Most recently, you can hear me doing a terrible David Lynch impression and
Ooh.
singing the song "In Heaven" from Eraserhead while trying to do a terrible David Lynch impression. So. And I help him out quarterly with his show Real Drunk, where we review movies after playing a drinking game. It gets a little intense. I literally don't remember the second half of the first movie we watched. I don't remember doing the review. I did it, but I don't remember it.
Are you drinking? What are you drinking?
That time I was drinking whiskey. It was not a great idea. I've scaled back to beer because you can control.
That's where I stole my idea of sauced ones. We're going to be getting off the ground soon, which is how many beers is it going to take for us to forget this or like think this
We might
bad
need that
movie is good?
22% beer you were talking about.
I'm going to send Lauren some bourbon, and this is her first introduction.
I can buy bourbon here.
Oh, I do love Real Drunk. What you guys do over at the Space Castle is a lot of fun. I know DT puts a lot into it, and then just what you bring to our Discord is, man, you got some knowledge. I love having you there. So thank you so much for joining our Discord, for becoming a friend. Man, you both are resident X-Men experts. And Micah, speaking of that, why don't you go ahead and let people know where they can find you as well?
Okay. Well, I used to have a podcast called Tavern Geek. I haven't done
right
episodes in a long time, but it's out there on Spotify. You can look it up, where I'm ranting anything that is on my mind when I've been drinking beer, from basketball to sport, whatever. But you can also hear me on Kish YZ's podcast. I get on there and we talk NBA basketball and do a lot of cool stuff on there. And you'll see me posting on their pages here at Hops Geeks News, and
you'll find Micah 3 a.m. talking about a broken washing machine and his 5th beer on our Discord, and you don't want to miss it. It is must wake up and read television, folks. I promise you. No, Micah has been such an awesome friend, and I got to meet you at GalaxyCon Richmond, and dude, I'm stoked for more adventures together. It's been such a pleasure. You both, like I said, are now our resident X-Men experts, so you're there, man.
Oh, yeah.
You're both in there. Lauren, why don't you go ahead, let the people know what have you been reviewing, where they can find your specific stuff, obviously Hops Geek News, but what else have you got going on?
Well, shockingly, I just reviewed a Wolverine comic. So it was number 46 of the current Wolverine run by Ben Percy, and I love how Ben Percy writes Wolverine. We are in part 6 of the Sabretooth War. Sabretooth really is just nostalgic and wants his BFF Wolverine back, but he has to brainwash him to do it. If you are hesitant to jump in on a Wolverine comic this late into it, you shouldn't be. But if you are, this is a great time to jump in because it's in the middle of the Sabretooth War. Get in, start reading it. You will love him. I met Ben Percy last year at MegaCon, and I told him, your Deadpool and Wolverine is the Deadpool and Wolverine I hope to see on the screen in July. So he's fantastic. Micah, he has been around for a while. We did a 3-part Wolverine series, I think back in early 2021 with Micah.
Yeah, we started in 2020.
One episode and it turned into 3 because there was just too much to talk about with Wolverine. So thank you, Micah, again for joining us. And Seth, I love all of your knowledge as well. If you've been listening to us for a while, you know that I didn't get into comics until I was an adult, and it is impossible to catch up on everything. So I love learning all of this. I'm loving the show. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on Nerd Initiative, my review with Megan, who's been in the comments, and Janelle from Nerd Initiative. We reviewed Women in Marvel for a little nod to Women's History Month. It is an anthology of different Marvel stories, all super fantastic. I absolutely loved it from beginning to end. It's only 38 pages, but there's like 6 different stories in there. You got Black Widow, you got Scarlet Witch, you got Sue Storm and Namor trying to marry her, and then all of a sudden it goes from the 60s comic to present day. Fantastic art, hilarious stories as well, and it's awesome. Go pick that comic up, and that's all I got. Cheers.
Lauren's got the best reviews. Stay tuned next week too, because Ghost Machine Day is April 3rd, where
and the new Minor Threats.
Yeah, in Minor Threats, The Fastest Way Down by Patton Oswalt, Jordan Blum. Ghost Machine Day is Redcoat, Rook Exodus, and Geiger. That's all coming out. And of course, check out our reviews. And then Monday drops our newest episode with my son, Oliver. He is my 8-year-old who joined us to talk Godzilla. And he actually dropped some pretty good knowledge on that episode.
He even corrected Matt at one
corrected
point.
me a couple times. And I was like, oh, all right, damn. Like,
the kid knows his stuff.
He's smart, man. He's a wicked smart kid. It was awesome. He's been asking to come on the podcast for a while. So he joins us to talk about Godzilla. That'll drop on Monday. But the best way to go ahead and make sure you're tuned in is just like, subscribe, share, follow the show, Hops Geek News, everywhere you find podcasts. Join our Discord channel, which you can find going through our link tree, or it's also here. I started in the chat. Go ahead and make sure you're doing that for us, folks. Hang out, meet these 2 fine individuals if you're very interested in the X-Men. Shout out to everybody in the comments. And then
hey, you did it too. I just did that.
Yeah, comments, and
it's
everything. Thanks to everybody for watching. We will be back next week with more episodes, possibly another Cantina Hour. We will see. Like I said, Cantina Hour is a brand new live that we've been doing weekly, and it's just to hang out and vibe. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers.